Hi everybody. Today's class is going to be focused on a little more on the lower body. I've been doing a lot of gardening and I'm sure some of you have been as well. So I'll be working on opening the hips, doing some back strengthening for anyone that's been sort of rounded forward in the garden for any extended period of time. This is also a great practice for anyone that has to do a lot of sitting for work or anything where their arms are forward a lot in space for their job, or any other hobbies like sewing or knitting or anything like that. If at any time you have any discomfort or anything, please stop what you're doing and modify. I'll be using just a couple of blocks for this practice today, but if you need a blanket for underneath your knees when we're in any kneeling shapes, then go ahead and grab one for that as well. So let's get started. And you can come onto your back to start. And just coming onto your back with your knees bent and your feet flat on the floor. Open up your arms into a letter A type of shape and just begin to let the body sink into the floor. Begin to notice any of the areas that are not in contact with the floor. Noticing the small space behind the low back and the gap at the back of the neck. The big space behind those bent knees. And then begin to notice the parts of the body that are settling onto the floor. The soles of the feet, back of the pelvis, mid-back and skull, and the backs of the arms. And can you make those areas a little bit heavier and a little bit wider, almost as though they're spreading out on the floor? And as you really begin to sense the back body in contact with the floor, noticing what's happening through the front body as well. Is there any gripping of the breath? Is the diaphragm holding? Are your ribs flared out? Maybe creating a larger space behind the low back than is needed. Are you gripping the throat or the tongue or the jaw? Can you allow the muscles all along the front of the body to soften and sink back toward the solid support of the floor? And tuning into the breath. I'm just going with a nice easy breath. In and out through the nose. And not directing the breath so much, but just noticing it and how it lands in the body naturally. And begin to sense which parts of the body are moving with the breath. Can you feel the lift and lower of your belly? The widening and narrowing of the ribs, however subtle. And the lifting and lowering of the chest. Can you notice all three of those zones moving with the breath? Or is there any muscular holding that might be preventing you from feeling those areas moving? And can you soften a little bit more, sink a little heavier to see if the breath might be able to open up a little more? Not changing the breath, but just softening and relaxing the body so the breath has space to move through. Then taking a slow, long inhale through the nose and a full sigh out. Beginning to come into the breath all the way down into the belly, inhaling, filling out the abdomen and the low back. Exhaling, feeling the ribcage narrow slightly. One more breath in. And a full breath out. Staying with that easy breath. Begin to widen the feet a little bit more if they're not already, almost as wide as your mat. And begin to just shift the weight of your hips from side to side. Just trying to make the motion come from the pelvis and allowing the legs to kind of go along for the ride. Can you soften the lower belly at all so that you get this hammocking of those muscles back towards the back of your pelvis so that you begin to notice a little opening sensation through the lower belly? Getting a little bit heavier into the tailbone if you're feeling the low back pressing into the mat a lot. And getting a little heavier into the belt line if you're feeling a significant arch through the lumbar spine, your lower back. Allow the legs to flow a little further towards the floor with every little motion here. And the next time you sway your legs over to the right, just pause and let the legs hang. If this bothers your knee at all, please come out and come into a better shape for your body. But just allowing the weight of the legs to help open up the hips and the low back a little as well. Take a nice full breath into the belly and the lower back. And a complete exhale, letting your bones drop a little heavier. And then inhaling back through center. Exhaling, let the legs fall over to the left. Same thing, noticing any sensations in the body. Allowing the legs to be heavier. Taking a slow breath in. A full and complete exhale, weighing the bones down towards the floor. One more breath in. Sway the legs back to center. On the breath out, completely letting go. Then walking the feet in a little closer to your sit bones. Draw one knee up towards your chest and then the other. And then let the knees part a little, hanging onto the shin bones. Just begin to sway from side to side here once again. As you're shifting your weight from side to side, rolling, you could pause as you shift to one side. Let the weight of if you're rolling to the right, the weight of your right arm, pull that right leg towards the floor a little bit, opening up the inner thigh. And then slow motion, come back through center and all the way over to the left, opening up the left inner thigh. Coming back through center. Then narrow the knees. Take your palms onto the tops of your kneecaps, fingers facing down towards your shins. And just with a gentle grip of the knees, begin to circle the knees. As you're circling the knees, sort of rolling along the perimeter of your sacrum, the big flat bone at the back of your pelvis, just moving in one direction to slowly mobilize the lower back. And then moving in the opposite direction, noticing if it's more challenging to move in one direction or the other, or if there's any significant change in the sensations that you feel as you shift sides. And the next time your legs come back through center, release just the left knee towards the floor. Draw your right knee back towards the right armpit, then reach up with your right hand. You're going to take your hand to the inside of your knee and grab the outside of your foot for half happy baby, hanging onto that foot. For now, let's make it passive. We're going to use the weight of our arm to pull on the right thigh bone back towards the floor, on the right foot, right thigh. So I'm not putting any muscular effort into actually pulling my leg back. I'm not taking it beyond anywhere that the weight of my arm and the opening in my hip joint aren't going to naturally allow it to go. So I'm not forcing it. I'm not creating the sense of push-pull that I often teach in this shape. We're going to go with a passive stretch at first. Then taking a slow, steady breath all the way down into that right hip. And a complete exhale. One more breath in. And a full breath out. And continuing to hang on to that right foot. Now I'm actively going to pull on the foot as I press the ball of my foot into my fingers a little bit. So creating that push and pull. It's like I'm trying to send the sole of my foot towards the ceiling. Keep that push-pull action happening, and then draw your left knee in towards your chest. Straighten the leg up towards the ceiling. Flex the foot so you're pressing the heel up towards the ceiling and drawing the toes back towards the shin. And then from here, slowly lowering down through that left leg until it just hovers an inch or two above the floor. Slow the breath down. Keeping that left foot hovering, begin to bend the knee, draw the left thigh back in towards your chest, so you're using the strength of your hip flexor, just drawing it in as close as you can naturally pull it into the body, then flex the foot, push the sole of the foot up towards the ceiling, and then press the back line of your leg towards the floor to lower the leg to hover once again. This time we're immediately just going to point through the toe. Draw the left knee in towards the body, then flex the foot, push the sole of the foot up towards the ceiling, lower the back of the leg down once again. One more time, point through the toe, bend the left knee to draw it in towards the body, flex the foot, push the sole of the foot up towards the ceiling, and then lengthen it back down towards the floor. So it's like this bicycling motion we're making with the left leg. You can keep going like that just a couple more times. Still holding on to this right foot. And the next time you press the left leg down towards the floor, this time let's let it land. Press the back of your heel into the floor and then actively push the back of your left thigh towards the floor. It may not touch. That's okay. Try to soften your jaw and your face a little as you breathe here. Remembering that sensation of pressing the back of your thigh towards the floor. We're essentially in lizard pose here on our back. And then bending your left knee, keep the left heel on the floor as you drag the heel in and let the sole of the foot land on the mat. Release the right foot. Let it land. Just take a moment here to walk the feet wide. Let your knees knock in towards each other. And sense one side and the other. Sense the difference. Both sides were working. What's the difference that you feel from one side to the other? And there's no right answer because everybody's body is shaped differently and we hold tensions in different regions. So just beginning to get to know how your body feels. One more breath in. Full breath out, and then you can heel toe your feet back in line with your sit bones. This time you'll draw your left knee towards your left armpit. Reach the left arm onto the inside of your left knee for the outside of your foot. And again, just using the weight of the arm at first, not creating a strong pull at all here. Just gripping the fingers around the foot and then letting the weight of the arm do the work. And breathing into that left hip. Using the breath to see if you can change any of the sensations you're feeling at all. And then drawing your right knee in towards your chest, straightening the leg up towards the ceiling. Draw the toes back towards the shin. And then lowering the right leg all the way down towards the floor, but not letting it land, just letting it hover. A couple slow breaths here. I'm really reaching out through the sole of my right foot, so my leg is nice and long and straight. And keeping the foot hovering, begin to bend the right knee. Draw the knee in towards your chest. Flex the foot, push the sole of the foot up towards the ceiling, and then lowering it back down again, letting it hover. Another couple breaths here. Feeling the back line of your leg pressing towards the floor, even though the foot has not landed. Flex the knee, draw it back in towards your chest. Press the sole of the foot up towards the ceiling, then the back line of the leg all the way down towards the floor. We'll keep it moving now. Point through the toe, bend the knee, draw the knee in, flex the foot, push it up towards the ceiling, and lower it back down. Keep moving like that. Just making this bicycle action happen from your right leg. Take one more full cycle. And then this time as you press the back line of the leg down towards the floor, let the back of your heel land. Push the back of your hamstring towards the floor, the back of your thigh towards the floor, a little or a lot. So even if it's coming nowhere near landing on the floor, and for a lot of us it's not going to because we have a lot of held tension in our hip flexors, you're still engaging that hamstring muscle and glute to press the thigh bone towards the mat, even if it's not moving very far. That's going to help open up the front of your right hip and get the hip flexors moving a little. One more time, draw the knee back in towards the chest, stretch the foot up towards the ceiling, lower it back down, let the back of the heel land, keep pushing through the back of your right hamstring towards the floor. And then from here, drag that right heel back in, bending the knee, land the sole of the foot, release the left foot back onto the floor. And then you can, again, heel toe the feet a little wider than the hips. Let your knees knock in towards each other. And slow the breath down. Begin to sway the hips from side to side once again. Slowly shifting from one side to the other. And then roll onto one side. Press yourself up. And we'll come all the way onto the belly. Okay. Hands come on either side of the rib cage. The fingertips are about in line with the tops of your shoulder, approximately. And the elbows are hugged in towards the side body, but they're not jammed in. You're not pushing them in as far as they can go. It's just a gentle squeeze to engage the muscles around the shoulders a little bit. From here, let's let the face hover. Keep reaching out through the crown of the head. And then shift your weight a little heavier into your right foot. Lift the left leg up, lengthen it out, and re-land it on the floor. And then shift your weight into the left foot. Lift the right foot up, lengthen it out, re-land it onto the floor. Both tops of the feet pressing into the floor a lot. And then as you're pressing the tops of the feet into the floor, create almost a pull forward, like you're trying to drag your feet forward and push the hip creases into the floor, engaging the glutes. So we're creating this kind of almost as though you're trying to propel yourself forward using just the legs to start. Now we'll come into the hands. Hands are already in good placement. Widen the fingers if you haven't already and root down through the fingertips. And then create a sense of dragging the hands back. That'll draw the shoulder blades back just a little and reach your heart forward. So it's not a very high cobra, but we're really engaging the muscles in our cobra. It's not as much of a stretch as it is strength here. And slow the breath down. Breathe into the belly. One more breath in. On the breath out, lower down through the chest. Let's cross the hands across the top of the mat. You can lower your head onto the hands. I'm going to keep my head lifted a bit so the sound doesn't get weird. From here, let's bend both knees and just begin to sway the legs from side to side. And just unwinding the low back a little bit. Sometimes even just laying on your belly can be a significant back bend. So if that's the case, then feel free to always go a little lower with the back bends. But adding this little bit of motion in to get the joints moving a little bit is usually enough to help the back settle into a nice, safe feeling space for it. From here, release the legs back onto the floor. Walk the elbows underneath the shoulders so you're coming up into more of a sphinx shape. Push down through the forearms, push down through the elbows, and as you push the elbows down, lift the chest up. Keep pushing the forearms and the elbows into the floor. Keep the chest lifted. Create that sense of pulling the legs forward once again as you drag the forearms back. Legs are nice and strong. Press the hip creases and the pubic bone into the floor strongly. Take a big breath in and a full exhale. One more inhale and a complete exhale as you shift your weight a little heavier into the right side of the body. From here, frog leg your left knee up towards the left elbow. I'm hoping that you guys can see this on the camera because I'm not sure, but actually let me move over a little bit so you can see it. You've got that left leg in a frog leg shape. Your right leg is still a cobra leg, and your upper body is in sphinx. So you're pushing your forearms down and dragging the elbows back, reaching your heart forward. Breathe into the belly, especially that right side of your lower abdomen. If this is too much compression in the lower back, again, you can lower your chest down a little bit, but also engaging your glutes. Sometimes it's not that we are up too high, it's that the right muscles aren't activated because they might not be used to activating. So try a little squeeze of the glutes, especially that right glute if you're having any compression through the lower back. One more breath in. And then straighten that left leg back down towards the floor. I'm going to wiggle my way back onto my mat now. Find those cobra legs once again. Really engage that left leg and then draw the right knee up towards the right elbow. Top of that left foot pressing into the floor, elbows, forearms, and hands pushing down as you lift the chest up, then drag the forearms back. Breathing into the belly, and focusing especially into that left side of your lower belly. Tuck the back toes, straighten out through that right leg once again. And then lower your upper body back down. Give your shoulders and arms a little bit of a rest. Again, you can let your head rest onto the wrist or hands. And another option, rather than bending the knees, sometimes feels better in the body, is to just simply sway the hips from side to side. And coming back to center. Take your hands onto either side of your ribs. Tuck the toes. And then come up onto hands and knees. In fact, let's sit back onto the heels. Walk your hands onto the floor in front of you and sitting your bum back just as comfortably or as low as it wants to sit. Walk your hands further forward than the shoulders, so your arms are on about a 45 degree, maybe a little less angle. And then from here, you're going to tuck flex the wrist and push the back of the hand onto the mat. Now, if this is too much flexion in your wrists, shift your hips forward a little bit. Once you've been in that level of hip flexion for a moment and you want to increase the stretch in the backs of your hands, you could begin to shift your hips back and maybe try wiggling the fingers a little bit. Try drawing the thumbs in a little bit. Just opening up the backs of your wrists and hands. And then walk one hand onto the mat and then the other. Then shift your hips up a little higher once again. This time hands come underneath the shoulders and turn the fingers back towards the knees. They might not turn back as far as you want them to. That's okay. If your hands are on a 45 like that, that's fine. Working towards fingertips straight back. And then from here, find just a little bit of rocking forward and back to stretch out your forearm flexors. And then walking the fingertips forward once again, coming back onto the backs of your wrists, this time with your fingertips facing the center of your mat, and then just shift your hips from side to side. Walking the hands back onto the floor, step your feet back, lower back down onto the belly. From here, stretch your right arm forward, hike that left knee up once again, and then roll onto your right side so that the head can rest on the biceps a little bit. And then from here, bend your right knee and reach your left hand back for the top of your right foot. And hanging on to the top of that foot, I'm just gently pulling the heel towards the sit bone. And begin to notice where you're feeling the stretch in this pose. It may depend on the flexibility or muscular development in the front of your leg and hip. For some of us, we're definitely going to feel this right in the center of our quad, that big, or that series of large muscles in the front of your leg. For some of us, we might feel this pulling at the knee, and if that's the case, you're going to want to use a strap or even grabbing onto your sock or your pant leg or something to give yourself just a bit more space so that you're not putting any pressure into the knees. And for some of us, as you find a deeper breath, you might begin to notice this stretch in the front of your lower belly, hip crease area a little bit more. And slowly release the grip of your right foot. Let it come back down to the floor. Return left hand to the floor. Come back onto your belly. And then we'll switch sides. Stretch your left arm forward. Frog leg that right knee up, just like we did in that last pose. And then shift your weight onto the left side a little bit. Bend your left knee. Reach your right hand back for the top of your left foot, and then lower the head down to rest on the bicep. Slow the breath down. And as you're breathing here on this side, trying to get a sense for where the breath is landing, where the sensations are felt, if there is any difference, major difference from side to side. Or perhaps all of that analysis, that attuning with on that sort of mind level with the body is not what you're feeling today. And if that's the case, simply feeling the sensations and not thinking about them so much. And 2 more breaths here. And slowly releasing that left leg, coming back onto your belly. take a little sway through the hips. Slow the breath down once again. And then coming back up, untucking the toes if they were tucked, walking the forearms back underneath you. We're going to take a moment to get into the upper body alignment a little bit more. So elbows underneath shoulders. And when I say elbows underneath shoulders, I mean directly or just a hair outside of the actual top of your shoulder. Not just about forward and back, but also about side to side. Sometimes if we're way over here, we're going to miss out on all of that upper back strength that we could be getting. So walking the elbows right in, close to the sides of your chest. They don't have to touch. Elbows pressing into the floor, fingertips rooting down into the floor, and then dragging your forearms back. From here, find just a subtle squeeze of the shoulder blades towards one another. It's not a big motion. It's just a little hug of the shoulder blades in to widen the collarbones through the front line of your chest. Reaching up through the crown of the head. Lifting the heart up and a little bit forward. From here, bending your left knee and flexing the foot. Keeping all of that activity through the upper body. The left leg isn't going to go anywhere, but we're going to energetically press the sole of the foot up towards the ceiling until you can feel your left glute and hamstring engage. Keep that push up action happening as you keep pressing down through the top of your right foot. If you've got a cobra leg on that right side, and then continuing with all that upper body work as you reach the heart forward, looking forward. Keep pushing that left leg up towards the ceiling, even though it's not going anywhere. And then lowering down through that left leg. We'll switch sides. Top of the left leg's pushing strongly into the floor. Bend your right knee, flex the foot, and then push the sole of your right foot up towards the ceiling as you press down through the top of your left foot. Breathing here. And staying engaged through the upper body, not slumping forward or sinking the chest. Two more breaths here. And slowly lowering down through that right foot, lowering down through the chest. You can cross your hands once again, sway your legs, sway your hips, bend your knees, whatever you feel. To just let go a little bit of that tension. Then coming up through the chest, walk the hands to either side of the chest. Press yourself up. Sit your hips back towards the heels, widening your knees just a little bit. And then shift the body from side to side. So we're not coming all the way down into a child's pose, just kind of sitting back towards a child's pose and then making it a little bit dynamic and just kind of sway and shift the hips from side to side, almost like you're trying to sit your bum down and then scoop it over to the other side. So you're making this kind of semicircle action happening, just to get the hips moving and get that synovial fluid pumping through those hip joints. This time as you shift over to the right, pull yourself a little further forward and then sit your bum back, circle all the way back and then forward to the left. Feel free to look at me because I don't know if I'm articulating this motion very well. So you're just shifting from one side to the other. And then coming back to center. Lift your hips up. You can have toes together and knees wide if you like here. Walk your hands forward and then lower the chest down towards the floor and let your forehead rest. From here, really lift your sit bones up and spread them wide as you let your chest sink towards or onto the floor. If your chest very easily comes to touch the floor, you could even lift up your head and let the chin rest on the floor to get a little more extension through the upper back and neck. One more breath here in puppy. Tuck your chin if it was on the floor. Walk your hands back and lift yourself back up. And then tuck your toes, lift your hips up into a downward facing dog. Begin to bend and stretch the legs, pedaling the feet. Take any little motions that you like to wake up the legs here. From here, look towards the top of your mat. Step the feet nice and wide from Malasana. Toe out, heel in. And settle down into your squat. Elbows into knees, thumbs into chest. Lift the chest up. And breathing here. If grounding your heels is a challenge in this pose, you could roll up your mat to support the heels. Another option would be to take the blocks. If you have blocks or if you have a couple books, it might not be as sturdy as you're used to if you have only books at home. And then sit your bum onto the blocks so you're still getting that opening through the hips. It's not quite as strenuous physically. If you're sitting up onto the blocks, just leaning forward, pull those blocks out, hands to the floor, lift your hips up, bend, heel toe the feet as wide as the mat, and then bend your knees a lot and let the upper body hang. You could bind the elbows here if you like. You could also take the blocks and set them up so that the crown of the head can rest on the block. Sometimes one block might not be enough. You might need two or a letter T shaped block, whatever it takes so that you can rest the crown of your head or your giant bun onto the block. And then just adds a sense of rest to the pose. Knees are generously bent, feet are wide, crown is resting, and maybe even reach the backs of your hands back in between the feet or even a little further back. Remove the block from underneath the skull if it's there. Fingertips walk back onto the mat ahead of your toes. Bend your knees even more. You can heel toe your feet in just a little bit. And then round through the spine. Rise up one vertebrae at a time. Open up wide through the chest. Arms reach all the way up. Look up. And then reach the arms down alongside the body. Coming into your Tadasana, your mountain pose for a moment. Feet are underneath the hips. palms are facing forward. Find a nice easy Tadasana for a moment and just rock forward and back from the ball of your foot onto the center of your heel to find your center of gravity. Also playing with the bend of your knee. A lot of us hyperextend, often to compensate for a lordosis or a deep curve in the low back. So try bending your knees just a little bit. It will feel, if you hyperextend, it might feel like a really big bend in your knees. But if you looked in a mirror, you'd see that you're not actually really even bending your knees. You're really just bringing them into your neutral alignment. That's going to allow your tailbone to sink a little bit towards the floor a little bit and to create a little bit of ease in the lower back. Take a slow breath in and a complete breath out, letting the shoulders sink without drawing them down. And trying that again. Take a slow breath in, filling up the belly, ribs, and chest. As you exhale gently, let the shoulders sink, maybe even the chest sinks a little bit. Knees stay generously bent. One more breath in. And on the breath out, rotate your shoulders in, tuck your chin, and round your upper back. As you inhale, lift up through the shoulders and chest, open the palms up to face forward, lift the head up. Exhale, rotate the shoulders in, tuck the chin, round your upper back. Inhale, shoulders draw up, chest lifts, heart and head look forward. Exhale, rounding through the spine, tuck your chin, maybe round your spine a little bit more this time. Inhale, unfurl the arms, palms face forward, look forward. Exhale, rounding the spine, bend your knees, tuck your chin, round your spine even more. Inhale, lifting up, widening the arms, look forward. And then this time, press the fingernails back and squeeze your bum, press your hips forward a little. Exhaling, tuck your chin, round your spine, bend your knees. Inhale, press your feet through the floor as you squeeze your bum, lift the chest up, fingernails pressing back behind you. Exhale, tuck your chin, thoroughly rotate those shoulders in as you round your spine. Inhale, lift up through the shoulders as then they draw down. Fingernails press back, heart reaches forward. Let's stay here. Keep that knee bend. I hyperextend, so you might see me jamming my knees back from time to time. Hard habit to break. Come back onto your hips, and then elbows squeeze in towards one another. Heart stays lifted, but then find that little bit of a drawing in sensation through the fronts of your ribs, really engaging those upper back muscles. Keep the crown of the head lifting. And then from here, bend the knees even more, begin to fold forward. Rounding over your bent knees, really generously bending the knees now, and then let the upper body hang. Bend your knees even more, round your spine back up, come all the way up, circle the arms up, interlace your hands, press the palms straight up towards the ceiling, keep a bend in the knee, and then shift your weight to the right foot, step your left foot back behind you, and then step the left foot until it crosses behind the right foot. From here, push your left heel down and then press up through the heel of your left hand. Take a big breath in and a full breath out. One more breath in. Complete exhale. Shift your weight back into your right foot. Step your left foot in line with the right. Arms reach down. Come back into that soft Tadasana. Not a strict straight Tadasana, a curvy, joint bendy Tadasana. Sweep the arms all the way back up. Interlace your hands, press the palms up, and then shift your weight to your left foot. Step your right foot back behind you, and then step it over to the left. As you push your right heel down into the floor, press the heel of the hand up, side bend to the left, slow breath into the right side body. Shift your weight back into the left foot, step your right foot back onto the mat, find that little bend to your knees, release the hands, fingertips or fingers are curled, shoulders drifting down the back, and breathing here. I was supposed to film this in my garden, but my neighbor behind me is building a patio or something. It's been days that I've been trying to film this, but there's always a saw going back there. So if you can just imagine yourself in your garden or on your lawn or outside anywhere that makes you feel really good, imagine that you're there right now in this shape. Generous, soft bend in the knees, fingers curled, shoulders resting down the back, tailbone effortless, you know the word I mean, reaching towards the floor. That little bitty hug in of the front ribs that's going to naturally happen when we take some of the excess curve out of the back. So you're in this shape and you're letting your feet connect to the earth. Really grounding down through the soles of your feet, connecting your soul to the soul of the earth. If you have the opportunity to take this practice outside, just this individual practice right here, this Tadasana of grounding into the earth, go ahead and do that at any time. This can be a great way to settle your nervous system in those times where we're feeling overwhelmed, anxious. It's a really great practice. And especially on a day like today where it's a little bit windy, letting yourself be nice and soft and curled through your fingers and soft through the joints, and kind of just letting the wind play with where your body is in space, and just allowing your body to adapt. And how important it is that we as humans adapt to our current circumstances. So this is what I love about yoga so much, is that sometimes, even if we're not talking philosophy in a class, the body motions and how our system responds to it is really kind of a metaphor for some of those philosophies. So allowing and being in this space, really connecting and moving with the wind, or the imaginary wind, rather than resisting it. Because when you resist it, that's when you are going to suffer. So if you can find that adaptability to change with your current circumstances, you will naturally feel a little bit more at ease. And take one more big breath in here. And a full sigh out. And then just releasing that Shavasana. You could take a little sway. I'm going to generously bend my knees and let my arms just kind of swing from side to side. I'm going to give myself a little bit of space here. I've got a big generous bend in my knees, and I'm going to shift my weight from one side to the other, and then rotating my spine. My arms just kind of come along for the ride. So my arms aren't actually doing any work here. It's the shifting of my hips and the rotation of the spine that is actually going to get my my arms moving. This is really great for your thoracic spine, your mid spine that is often resisting rotation. And it's a really important part of the spine for rotation. And when we don't get that rotation naturally into the body when we're sitting at a desk or holding our breath or any sort of postures where we have to get really rigid here, we start to lose that function of rotation. And then our lower back and neck have to compensate. And the neck is naturally made for rotation. The lower back is not. There's very little rotation that should be happening through the facet joints in your lower back. So one of the ways that we get more rotation into our T-spine or thoracic spine is actually through arm swing when we walk. But so many of us are carrying heavy bags, or we're cold, so we're crunching our bodies in, that our arm, we lose that arm swing. So the next time you're out for a walk and you're feeling brave, really exaggerate your arm swing to get the rib cage moving, and in turn getting the spine moving. And then making that motion a little bit smaller. Widening your feet just a little bit again. Bend your knees, fold over your thighs. Let the body hang, and then just take a few bounces here. So bending your knees, letting the weight of your head traction that mid back a little. And walking your hands onto the floor, stepping your shin bones back down onto the floor. And then taking your blocks. Now I'm realizing a lot of you don't have 2 blocks at home, if you even have 1 block. So if you don't, I should have said at the beginning, you could also go grab a stack of towels for this next shape, or you could do the active version. We're going to take a bridge. In fact, I'll take everybody through an active version first, and then if you have blocks, or you can grab that stack of towels, then you can do the passive version with me as well. Otherwise, you can just do a couple rounds of the active version of bridge, which is super great for our bodies. Walk your feet in close-ish to the sit bones. Don't have them jammed in as far as they can go. Give your knees a little bit of room to breathe. Stretch your fingertips down along the floor. Arms are reaching nice and long. You can grab onto the outside edges of your mat if you wish, and then scoop one shoulder blade up and underneath you, and then the other. And then from here, let's lift the hips up. I'm pressing my shoulders into the floor and lifting the sides of my chest up as I pull the mat apart. Pressing the back of the skull into the floor and maintaining the natural curve at the back of my neck. So I'm not jamming my chin into my throat or pushing the back of my neck onto the floor. Through the legs, ground down through the center of your heel and press the balls of your feet into the floor a lot, lifting up through the arches. And then energetically drag the feet towards your hips to engage through the glutes and hamstrings a little bit more. Three more breaths. Lowering all the way back down. Let the body rest for a moment. And then reaching for a block. We're going to take the block underneath the back of the sacrum. But if you haven't practiced with me before, I tend to set it up in a little bit of a different way than most teachers. So what you're going to do is lift your hips up and slide the block underneath the back of your sacrum, not under your lower back. It's going to be on the lowest level and wide. so that you can support the SI joints a little bit. And then from here, turn the palms up to face the ceiling. Arms are in that letter A shape. And let the tailbone get a little heavy. Let the low belly soften. Breathe into the belly. If you don't have blocks, you can continue with a series of active bridges. If you only have one block, you can feel free to stay here. Another option as well is that if you have two blocks, but this is where you're feeling solid today, just stay here. This is really just about softly opening up the hip flexors in the lower abdomen. If you'd like to add the second block, you can walk your feet in a little closer, lift your hips up, and then place the block underneath or on top of the first block. And you want to make sure that they're squared up so that you're not going to fall off. And then let the soles of the feet land. Open up through the arms, palms face the ceiling. And then walking your feet back in closer once again. Lift your hips and just take one block out. Let your hips land back on that first block. Lifting your hips up. Take the first block away and come right back down onto the floor. And sensing the back of your pelvis on the floor. Keeping the whole back of your pelvis on the floor. Wag your tail to the right as though you're trying to hike the right hip up towards your shoulder. So you're feeling a contraction along the right side of the waist and lower back. And then allow it to come back to center, and then wag your tail over to the left, feeling the left side waist or back or both contracting as the right side lengthens. And releasing, coming back to center, wag your tail to the right. Release that, come back through center and wag your tail to the left. And come back through center. Heel-toe the feet in line with your sit bones. Cross the left ankle over the right knee. Pressing the ankle into the knee, just begin to sway the legs from side to side. as you sway your legs from side to side, resist the tendency to clench the jaw and tighten the muscles in the face and throat. So trying to stay as soft as you can. And if that means maybe you need more support there, so maybe you widen your arms a little bit more into more of a letter T shape. And the next time your legs fall over to the right, let the sole of the foot land and reach your right hand down for the left ankle. Hang onto the ankle, press the left knee away from you, and then allow the left outer hip to really sink towards the floor. And if it's stretching intensely, it might be hard to really let it go. So it might mean actually letting go of your ankle so that you can soften through that outer hip a little bit more if the stretch is a little too intense. Staying in this shape in the lower body and then sweeping your left arm up and overhead. Take a little side bend, not a full side bend, to the right. Arc that left arm sort of overhead and then press out as though you're trying to press the whole forearm towards the wall behind you to get into your lats a little bit here. Breathing into the left side ribs. And lowering that left arm back down. Release the ankle, sway your legs back to center, and then we'll switch sides. Right ankle crosses left knee, open the arms into a T, and begin to shift the hips from side to side, swaying through the legs. And the next time your legs sway over to the left, reach down with your left hand for the right ankle, holding onto the ankle. Resist letting the knee just collapse in towards you. Actively push it away from you, opening up the right side waist, and let the outer hip sink a little towards the floor. Breathing generously and smoothly into that right outer hip. And then reaching that right arm overhead, side bending just a little bit to the left, and then pressing out through the whole length of your right forearm like you're trying to stick it to the wall behind you to open up the right lat a little bit. Actively pushing. Your lat's a pulling muscle, so part of getting it to lengthen is going to be involving a push, 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 actively. Continuing to breathe. And sweeping the arm back down, coming back to center through the upper body, legs coming back to center, unravel the legs. So because this is a practice intended for gardeners or anyone with a lot of hip flexor tension, We're going to stay in Ardha Shavasana today. That's half Shavasana, so that means knees bent, feet on the floor. They can just be as they are, or you can walk your feet a little wider, knees knock in. So that's just going along with the theme of this practice. If you are needing a full-on restful spread right out or legs over a chair Shavasana, just go ahead and do whatever serves you best right now. But if you're thinking relieving some of those gardening muscles, you may want to stay in this shape. Slowing the breath down. Allowing the body to be held. Feel free to pause here and continue to stay in your Shavasana, or you can slowly begin to find a little bit of movement in the body. Stretch out the legs and arms away from one another and take a good morning stretch. So you're finding some tension through the body as you lengthen everything away, and then completely release. Make your way onto one side. Press yourself up. Come into kneeling or a cross-legged seat. Reach tall through the crown of the head and let the shoulders soften away from the ears. Lower your hands at your heart. Thank yourself for practicing. Namaste.